Geodiode, who has been
Yes.
very kind to us in terms of learning, our countries and getting a great, what's the word, crash course on
Yes.
all these countries. It's been done Philippines, done Sweden, Brazil, South Africa, and now we've got Japan.
This channel is an amazing tool to like break the ice and get the conversation started.
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Oh yeah, and that's the whole point of this channel, is just to get the conversation going, learn all the things that we didn't learn in high school, which was a whole lot of stuff.
That's a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, let's go. Let's dive in.
3, 2, 1. These beginning parts are also always so beautiful.
Oh, amazing.
A volcanic archipelago on the eastern edge of the Eurasian continent. A land of stunning natural beauty, enhanced by centuries of unique art. Having a history completely unlike any other nation, it has maintained a unique and distinctive culture to the present day. This is the country that rose from the ashes of defeat in war to become a global economic superpower. This is the land of samurai and judo, sushi and bonsai, manga and Godzilla. This is the land of the rising sun. This is Japan.
Like right off the bat, those not only all those beautiful sights, but those two screens where they showed how many companies that are in our normal everyday lives originate from Japan.
Yep.
And it's just mind-blowing.
I always tend to forget this, and I think it's just because of everything that's like in my face all the time, that there is beautiful scenery there. I know that sounds really like short-sighted, like it's like no shit, but I just, every time I think of Japan, I think of like a city country, like of just buildings and masses, like,
right,
just industry, tech going crazy. But there are those that ancient history
Yeah.
That's
The-
insane and deep.
Yeah, the countryside. It's not all just, Tokyo. And I remember like an Anthony Bourdain quote about when he talked about Tokyo. And it's basically, as a chef, you go there and the feeling you get as a Westerner is probably the same feeling that Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend had when Jimi Hendrix rolled up. It's just that kind of mind fuck and just how much better everything is.
Yeah. That's a good way to put. But I always feel like I always forget about the scenery and the landscapes that Japan has. And,
Right.
I hope he does a good job on that. I mean, he does a great job. Side point. I know I'm rambling, but I would love to see his video of the US. How he packages up the US.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably going to be like an hour video at least. Like I know the Geography Now video of the United States of America, that's like an hour and 4 minutes. So
wow,
it would probably be similar to that.
Yeah, because I feel like I would love to see how he packages it up, because he does such a good job of just nutshelling everything. Just here it is. What you need to know. But all right,
100%.
Japan.
All right, let's go.
Japan is an archipelago lying off the eastern temperate coast of Asia, and is a country that is the home of the people of the same name, the Japanese. They call their own country Nihon or Nippon, which literally means sun's origin, referring to the fact that it is the first significant place in Asia to receive the sunrise each day.
Nice.
The word has been in use since around 700 AD. The English word for this country, Japan, is believed to have come through a corruption of Nippon via Portuguese, Malay, or Mandarin Chinese. The Japanese archipelago has been inhabited by humans at least as far back as 16,000 years by hunter-gatherers known as the Jomon. But around 300 BC, the Yayoi people began to move into the islands from the mainland, bringing with them the ancestor of today's Japanese language, as well as Chinese influences in art and architecture. The first mention of Japan in written records was in the Chinese Book of Han in 111 AD, and the later Chinese records of the Three Kingdoms mention Yamato as being the most powerful of a number of states on the archipelago. Buddhism arrived around the 6th century from the Korean peninsula and was mixed with the traditional Shinto religion of the islands. A gradual centralization of power took place between the 6th and 8th centuries in what was known as the Asuka period, but the first truly recognizable Japanese state began in the Nara period of the 8th century, with the first emperor ruling from a Chinese-styled court. The capital moved to Kyoto in 794, where it would remain until almost the present day. Introverted into the politicking of the imperial court, the emperor's power declined over the following centuries, and regional clans filled the vacuum. Civil war erupted in the 12th century, with the Minamoto clan coming out on top, and their head becoming the first shogun, a military ruler with true power, with the emperor merely as a figurehead. Japan would remain more or less under military rule for the next 7 centuries. During these next centuries, power shifted back and forth between the regional clans and their armies of samurai, and the shogun. These clans united to beat off 2 attempted Mongol invasions in 1274 and 1281, but by 1467 the shogun's power was broken, and the country descended into violent civil war, with more than a dozen clans, ruled by feudal warlords known as daimyo, fighting it out over the next century, in what became known as the Sengoku period, the stories of which have gone into legend, to be retold time and again. This period was further complicated by the first arrival of Europeans, principally the Portuguese, but later the Dutch and English, who brought with them Christianity and guns. This period was finally concluded in the year 1600 at the Battle of Sekigahara, when the warlord Tokugawa Ieyasu was triumphant and all other rival clans defeated. While the powerless emperor remained in Kyoto, the shogun Tokugawa moved his court to Edo, later renamed Tokyo, and his successors held absolute power for the next 2.5 centuries. Christianity was viewed as a threat to the shogun's power and was outlawed under penalty of death. To go further, all external influences would be prevented as Japan closed itself off from the outside world. Japanese were forbidden to travel abroad. No foreigners were permitted to enter Japan, with only a sole Dutch outpost being permitted. No other country in world history has enacted such a wide-reaching policy of isolation for so long.
Wow.
Despite the isolation, Japan flourished economically and artistically, and its population expanded considerably, reaching 30 million by the year 1700, with Edo being the largest city in the world by 1721. At this time also, private schools flourished, and it is thought that Japan may have been the most literate country in the world at that time. By the mid-1800s, however, the power of the shogun was waning as a result of growing unrest from government ineptitude and economic stagnation. But it took a foreign power to act as the catalyst for change. In 1852, a fleet of United States warships led by Commodore Perry was given a mission by the president to force Japan to open up to trade. The following year, this fleet arrived in Edo Bay and used its displays of superior military might and technology to intimidate the Japanese authorities, who eventually had to concede in allowing foreigners to visit and trade with the country. This change destabilized the shogunate, and after a brief civil war, was deposed in 1868, with the emperor restored to power in what became known as the Meiji Restoration, named after the emperor's dynastic name. It was at this time that the capital was moved from Kyoto to Edo, and that city renamed to Tokyo, meaning Kyoto of the East. In the following decades, the fastest modernization of any country in history took place, with Japan developing from an almost feudal society into an industrialized nation. Westerners were brought in their thousands to advise and supervise in the construction of railways and factories, and the traditional dress of the rulers and the armies of the shogunate was replaced by European-style uniforms. Despite this westernization, however, the Japanese held firm to their traditional mix of Buddhist and Shinto culture and traditions. It was during this period that the last and most northerly of the main islands of the archipelago, Hokkaido, began to be colonized. Throughout all the preceding centuries, the island was inhabited by the ethnically distinct Ainu people, and there had been little interest in it by the shogunate and the main clans due to its harsh winter climate. But this changed with the growth of Japan into a modern nation, as its lands were seen as a means of feeding the growing population, as well as ensuring that a firm presence there would resist the threat of a Russian takeover. Between 1850 and 1950, the population on the island exploded from just 70,000 to over 4 million. The native Ainu people were assimilated into the larger population, their distinctive culture all but extinguished. There had never been a democratic tradition in Japan, and so although an elected House of Representatives was part of the new constitution, only 2% of Japanese could vote, and ultimately all nominal power was held by the emperor. The military began to gain power and influence throughout the government, believing that the only way to ensure Japan's survival in this age of Western colonialism was to use its new industrial power to seize colonies of its own, gaining Taiwan in 1894 and, emboldened by the defeat of the Russian fleet in 1905, occupying Korea in 1910. This process of military control accelerated rapidly in the late 1920s and early 1930s, inspired by fascism from Europe, with moderates and dissidents murdered. In 1931, the large northern Chinese province of Manchuria was occupied, and in 1937, Japan began a full-scale invasion of China, the latter weakened by its own civil war which had been raging since the disposal of the emperor in 1911. Such actions brought condemnation from the United States and the United Kingdom, who saw the growth of Japanese regional power as a threat to their own colonies and influence in the region. Japan responded by allying itself to fascist powers in Europe, Germany and Italy in 1940, further worsening relations with the US and Britain.
Okay, that right there, that's the first one that's more I'm trying to absorb, but then that explains why Japan was not on our side. They were on the side of Germany and Italy.
It was pretty crazy. It's like, the US got there like, you will trade with the world. And then they're like, okay, we'll help you industrialize and everything, build everything up. And then now they needed resources and they needed to industrialize. Why not colonize to get materials to industrialize to keep building up?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, yep. And I'm just learning about that. This whole right here, this section of their history.
Right. In fact, we did a video of how World War II is taught in Japanese schools, and
Or not.
or not,
Or not.
is more the right terminology there.
Yeah.
Need we say more?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I mean, because this had, you would say, this World War II, the involvement in World War II, and had a direct. Without that, it wouldn't be where it is now. You know,
Right.
And I'm trying to say that as carefully as possible. You know, but it's just interesting to see what led up to, what caused that alliance and that the mindset.
100%, and all the eras beforehand. I know, he's probably omitting a lot of details, so because of the rich history of Japan, would probably be a 3-hour video minimum to even cover the basics of a lot of those.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so we'll probably be here for a while when it comes to those earlier eras.
What's shocking me though is that these eras that were put in place, or that won between the warring factions, were in place for quite a long while, like 2 centuries, 3 centuries, 7 centuries. Like there wasn't a lot of like warlord syndrome, like every 30 years shit would change. Right. It's like this is like 4 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes worth. Then a change would happen.
That's just how it is for a couple generations.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the Japanese invasion of French Indochina, what is today Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos, Western trade embargoes culminated in an oil embargo, and without oil, Japan would not be able to continue its industrialized warfare and had to act. Realizing it could not win a long war with the United States, Japan aimed to knock them out of the Pacific with a devastating blow. And so on December 7th, 1941, they launched the surprise attack on the United States Pacific Fleet stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as a pretext to a declaration of war. At the same time, Japanese forces invaded British Southeast Asia, and within weeks, Singapore had fallen in what is regarded as the worst defeat in British military history. The Philippines and the Dutch East Indies, what is now Indonesia, were also occupied in rapid succession. It seemed that Japanese military power was unstoppable. And so it is that we enter what I consider to be the darkest part in Japanese history. For the peoples of those subject nations and the Allied soldiers captured as prisoners of war, life under Japanese rule was nothing short of hell. Through a twisting of the traditional Bushido samurai code, defeated armies and peoples were viewed as subhuman by the ruling military, and their armies were ordered to treat them brutally. Allied POWs were starved, put into forced labor, tortured and executed, while subject peoples in China, Korea, the Philippines and elsewhere were subject to massacres, mass rape and forced prostitution.
Oh my God, yeah.
By this same twisted code, the Japanese were taught that to be taken alive by the enemy was worse than death, and so as the Allies finally began to turn the tide of war in late 1942, the slow process of expelling the Japanese from their occupied territories was met with ferocious resistance, with soldiers fighting to the death rather than be captured. And in the ultimate symbol of nationalistic sacrifice, pilots of the Japanese Navy turned themselves into guided missiles in suicidal kamikaze attacks on US ships. The Battle of the Pacific, one of the most brutal and savage in any of history, reached an ultimate and truly apocalyptic crescendo in mid-1945. In the face of such suicidal resistance, it was estimated that a full-scale invasion of the Japanese main islands would result in 500,000 deaths of US servicemen. And a decision was made by US President Truman to use the ultimate weapon against the enemy. On August 6th and 9th of 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the southwestern cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Between them, almost 250,000 people were killed, mostly civilians. It is the only time in history where atomic or nuclear weapons have been used in war.
There has got to be a way that the fat electrician has described those two bombs there, and I can't remember what it is.
It's what is it? Spawn points for the sun.
Spawn points for the sun. Okay, yeah. That was basically our way of telling the Japanese to give it up,
like chill out.
Chill out.
even though like the bat bomb stuff or the fire bombing did a lot worse damage.
Yeah.
Like, that was insane carnage on that operation. But yeah, because they fought to the death.
Right,
And-
right. It was like I said, it's better to die than to be captured alive.
Yeah, and that's why the POWs were treated so poorly, is because they weren't human to the Japanese.
They were
because-
subhuman scum.
Yeah, like, oh, you gave up. I'm not treating you like a soldier. You gave up. You're still alive.
Yeah, and it puts another piece of the puzzle into how Japan, the relations with all the other Asian countries are. Like, between, how they invaded China and, what was now modern day Vietnam and the Philippines. Like, I see now why there's a lot of, cultural tension between all the countries there.
Their movement, I would say, was on par with what Adolf did in Germany at the beginning. Like, their movement was just unrivaled. They just swept over nations very quickly before anyone was like, what the fuck is going on?
Right. And I guess the difference is post-war, Japan didn't have as much humility as Germany did. I mean, granted, Germany had like the biggest humble pie to eat after World War II, but from what we learned from that Simon Whistler video, Japan kind of doesn't like talking about that.
Yeah, at all.
Yeah.
So
after such a devastating shock, Japan had no choice but to think the unthinkable, and it surrendered unconditionally. The country was in ruins. The 2 atomic bombs just the final blow after months of conventional bombing that had devastated all major cities. For the first time in its long history, Japan was occupied by a foreign power, the United States. The leadership of the Japanese military under Tojo were tried and executed as war criminals, but the Allies decided to let the Japanese keep their emperor, Hirohito, to prevent total humiliation of the nation and any potential unrest in the general population.
Yeah, that photo right there of MacArthur, towering over Hirohito, Emperor Showa, like that was a huge black eye to the Japanese folk. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, because he was a god.
Yeah.
Like, he was a god. And for the first time ever, because of the war, people actually heard his voice.
Mm-hmm.
No one else had ever heard him speak.
Right. Another big little piece of humble pie right there.
Man.
To prevent total humiliation of the nation and any potential unrest in the general population. In the following years of occupation, up to 1952, major reforms were made to ensure that democracy and an orientation to peaceful methods would survive into the future. And this has borne out in the 7 decades since, with the country not having fought a war but instead focusing on economic growth and power. Mirroring, in a way, the incredible transformation from feudal to industrial power in the late 1800s, Japan pulled off another economic miracle, rising from the ashes of World War II to become the world's second largest economy by the late 1960s. The economy grew year on year, on average by 10% from 1956 until 1973, and by 1968 only the United States had a higher economic output. Due largely to trends in overall demographics, however, the economic boom came to an end in 1989 with the stock market and property price crash, and throughout the 1990s there was virtually no growth in what became known as the lost decade. Since 2000, growth has recovered, albeit slowly. Japan is a unitary state, meaning that the central government has supreme authority, as opposed to federal systems like the United States. The country is divided into 47 counties called prefectures, and some of the larger prefectures, such as Hokkaido, are divided into sub-prefectures. At the base of the state administration are the municipalities, numbering over 1,700 in total. Some of the larger cities like Tokyo and Osaka have their own exceptional government structures. Since the new constitution was created in 1947, The emperor has no formal powers, and so Japan is now a constitutional monarchy governed by an executive of a prime minister and cabinet elected from the parliament known as the National Diet.
Okay, so similar to the UK, like the monarchy, it's just what's the right word? It's a figure, not really with any power, and the powers within the government. Like, I guess like it's just a figurehead. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Diet is bicameral, meaning that it is composed of two houses. A 465-seat lower House of Representatives elected by universal suffrage every 4 years, and a 245-seat upper House of Councillors elected again by all Japanese citizens over the age of 18, serving 6-year terms.
Okay, that's the big difference. There's the that right there, that second one, that's the equivalent of our United States Senate.
Yeah.
Because those are voted on. The House of Lords in the UK, that is I think that's not voted on. That is
it's like inherited.
Inherited. That's probably the best term right there.
The Conservative Liberal Democratic Party has been in power for all but 9 of the years since 1955 and dominate Japanese politics, making some international commentators describe Japan as a flawed democracy. The current emperor is Naruhito, son of Akihito, who abdicated in 2019, and grandson of Hirohito, who had lived through all the turbulence of the nationalistic takeover of Japan, the most violent of all wars, its defeat and subsequent occupation by the United States, and its rise economically afterwards. Ultimately, these emperors trace their lineage back to the 7th century BC according to legend, although the first historically verifiable emperor dates to the 6th century AD. Either way, Japan is regarded as the world's oldest surviving monarchy. Japan is an archipelago of over 6,800 islands occupying the northwestern Pacific. All but 4 of these islands are comparatively small and outlying, and it is on the 4 main islands where the vast majority of the population live. A 5th Okinawa in the far south halfway to Taiwan is a notable exception to this rule. The main 4 are from north to south: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. It is possible to travel across all 4 main islands by train, and from tip to tip would take you just 29 hours thanks to the remarkable bullet trains that run all the way from Sapporo in the north to Kagoshima in the south.
Wow.
A car journey would take you 37 hours by comparison and involves a ferry crossing from Hokkaido to Honshu in the north.
A 37-hour car drive. I'm just trying to think what would that be a comparison to? Because it'd be like from like Washington D.C. to down to Miami, it'd be like an 18-hour trip. So basically, in that time, you could probably get halfway through the United States from the East Coast or the West Coast. You could probably get to the Midwest from that.
Yeah, I got it. Yep, because I think from east to west, it's like 40-something hours.
Yeah.
But no breaks, like straight.
Yeah, with no break, just driving straight. Like,
and you have the unlimited gasoline hack. Like,
yeah, that would be nice.
Japan's total land area is about 400,000 square kilometers, making it the 4th largest island in the world and 61st country overall. It has the 6th longest coastline of any nation. Its highest point is Mount Fuji at 3,776 meters, a dormant volcano that last erupted in 1708, and, owing to its near-perfect profile, a national symbol and the most photographed natural feature on Earth. Japan is bordered by the Pacific Ocean all along its southeastern flank. To the northwest it faces the Korean Peninsula, the Sea of Japan, and the extreme southeast of Russia around their port of Vladivostok. To the north is Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands, also a part of Russia, but with the closest 4 being claimed by Japan. To the south runs the long chain of the Ryukyu Islands that face China across the East China Sea. Japan spans about 20 degrees of latitude from 24 degrees north at the bottom of the Ryukyu chain to 45 degrees north at the tip of Hokkaido. Consequently, it sees great variation in climate. The far southern islands are subtropical bordering on tropical. As we head north along the Ryukyu chain and onto the main islands, the humid subtropical climate of hot summers and cool winters, with year-round precipitation, dominates all but mountain areas and is regarded as the principal climate of Japan.
Okay, so this is the part where we're trying to figure out when's the best time to visit. So I think it, just from looking at this, it could be comparable to the
Yep.
U.S. and maybe a slight bit warmer in the winter times, but similar like precipitation, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's Tokyo, right? All right. Yeah.
yeah, that's Tokyo right there. Perfect.
It's only when we move into the north of Honshu Island where the winters start to become cold and consistently snowy, and where
All right, yeah, here we go. 8 inches of precipitation in the summer times, and 3 to 2 in the winter times. But yeah, now we're starting to get cold.
That's more reminiscent of Maryland, right there, right there.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Yeah,
That's yeah. Except our Decembers are kind of up. That last dip doesn't really exist in Maryland. It's more like 60 until ish December.
yeah.
But then it goes whoop. Same thing.
Oh yeah. And then I'd say Tokyo is very comparable to the Carolinas in terms of climate.
Yep.
where we find a hot summer continental climate. Finally, in the far north, these hot summers give way to only warm ones, and in combination with the cold winters, the island of Hokkaido is therefore dominated by the warm summer continental climate.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna compare that to the UK summer, and because that's quite similar, I'd say.
Yeah, their heat wave is maxing 60 something.
Yeah, which is not a heat wave. Let's just get that out there.
Yeah.
The humid subtropical and continental climates are characterized by 4 distinct seasons, and being present in Japan have become a part of their culture and art history. The snows and chills of winter contrast with the full green leaf and sweltering heat of summer, while autumn bursts into vivid color thanks to so many maples being present on the islands. But it's the spring that is celebrated the most, specifically the flowering of the cherry tree, the blossom that the Japanese call sakura. The blossom lasts no more than a week or so in one location, but the wave of blossom travels up the country from south to north over March and April. During this
Oh yeah, I got to point out that in Washington D.C. we have Japanese cherry blossoms, and it's a big deal when they blossom. Like there's a cherry blossom festival that happens. So
I believe they were a gift.
Yeah, they were a gift from Japan. So thanks, Japan. That's awesome.
Yep, that is nice.
Mm-hmm.
This festival, known as Hanami, family and friends celebrate with food and drink together beneath the trees in a tradition that goes back centuries. The northwest coast of Japan has the peculiarity of being one of the snowiest places in the world. This is owing to a rare combination of cold winds blowing over water onto the land. In this case, the dry cold winds that consistently blow out from central Siberia each winter. As they roll over the Sea of Japan, they gather moisture, then deposit it heavily onto cities like Sapporo and Niigata. This unusual effect is the winter part of the Eastern Asian monsoon, the world's largest weather system, which affects all islands in Japan. In summer, winds move in the opposite direction from the Pacific Ocean toward the Eurasian mainland, laden with moisture. As most of the populated cities are on the southeast side of the islands, these cities experience higher rainfall in summer than in winter as a result.
Yeah, just looking at like Osaka, they get just under 8 inches in June, and Tokyo gets just over 8 inches in September. So I guess bring a rain jacket.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely toasty in Osaka during the summer, but yeah, it did get quite mild in the winter times.
Yeah, December or November wouldn't be bad.
No, it wouldn't be bad. I might compare Osaka.
That's pretty cold though. That's pretty cold.
In the winter time.
Yeah, in Tokyo.
In Tokyo. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Owing to its heavily mountainous geography, 2/3 of the land is not suitable for either agriculture or urban development, and so much of the country has retained the natural biome of temperate broadleaf forest.
Wow.
In the far north, this forest gives way to coniferous boreal forest, while in the far southern islands, a form of tropical forest is present. That mountainous geography has a single cause, one that is perhaps Japan's biggest curse: plate tectonics. Japan lies adjacent to fault lines that separate the giant Pacific plate with others on the eastern edge of Asia. This has produced volcanoes such as Mount Fuji just mentioned, but more importantly earthquakes, and especially the tsunami that can sometimes be produced when these occur over water. In fact, the word tsunami is one that we have borrowed from Japanese, so much that these destructive forces have dominated their history, with the most recent being the Tohoku earthquake of 2011. This magnitude 9 quake killed 16 to 20,000 people, the vast majority of whom were drowned by the tsunami, and led to the nuclear disaster at Fukushima, whose effects are still ongoing today. Japan has a population of 126 million, ranked 11th in the world, with 80% of them living on the largest island of Honshu. Almost a third of them, 38 million, live in the Greater Tokyo area, which is the most populous metropolitan area in the world.
Ah, yeah.
The second largest conurbation is that of Osaka, Kobe, Kyoto, having 20 million people. Between them, these two conurbations account for half of Japan's population.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Already one of the most densely populated nations in the world, and with most of the land area mountainous, this population is crammed into crowded cities that occupy the relatively rare coastal plains. The vast majority of Japan's population, over 98%, are ethnic Japanese, making the country one of the most ethnically homogeneous in the world. At 83.5 years, Japan is ranked number 2 in the world for life expectancy, with the island of Okinawa having the highest proportion of centenarians found anywhere in the world. With an increasing aging population due to a reduction in the birth rate in recent decades, the population is expected to fall considerably to 95 million by 2050, which will have significant effects on the economy, housing, and so on.
Oh my god.
The Japanese language is spoken by virtually all the inhabitants of the archipelago. Its origins are uncertain, but it is believed to have come across from the mainland by the Yayoi people about 2 millennia ago. It is the dominant member of the small Japonic language group, with Ryukyuan being the other, spoken only by older people in the Ryukyu Islands and now facing extinction. Japan was greatly influenced by the Chinese in the 8th and 9th centuries, with as many as half the words today believed to have come from this period of importation. The written language is one of the most complicated in the world, being a combination of 3 different scripts: kanji, hiragana, and katakana. Kanji, derived from Chinese, uses thousands of different pictograms to describe meaning and is used for most content words. Hiragana and katakana represent spoken syllables and are used to perform grammatical linkages and borrowed foreign words, respectively. Shinto and Buddhism.
I'm sorry, but like, I hope this doesn't come off as insensitive, but my goodness, how the hell do you text in Japan? Because that is
In English.
text in English.
Yeah, bro, that language, man, good on you guys.
Yeah.
I feel like that language takes a lifetime to learn.
Yeah. But then again, the earlier point of how it's so racially homogenous, there's plenty of people to bounce it off of.
Yeah, very true. You're practicing it literally everywhere.
Yeah, you'll learn it pretty darn quick.
Man.
Yeah.
Buddhism and borrowed foreign words, respectively. Shinto and Buddhism are the country's primary religions. Shinto is exclusive to the archipelago and is based on the belief that kami, or spirits, are present throughout nature as well as in people. Buddhism arrived in Japan around a millennium after its birth in India in the 6th century BC. Japan's flag is unmistakable, being a simple red disc in the center of a field of white, representing the rising sun. It has been in use formally since 1870, although the use of a sun flag to represent the Japanese imperial court goes back as early as the 8th century. Japan has no coat of arms as such, but the chrysanthemum is considered a national emblem and represents the emperor. Japan's economy is the 3rd largest in the world after the United States and China, and ranks as number 1 in the world by the Economic Complexity Index. It is dominated by an advanced manufacturing sector that exports electronics, cars, motorcycles, robots, and dozens of other types of finished products or components built to a quality and precision that is the envy of the world.
Yeah, look right here. 14.4% cars. Yeah. They know what they're doing when it comes to cars. You know,
Yep.
Toyota, Nissan. Are there others? I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, when it comes to tech, they got that stuff on lock.
Dude, unrivaled.
Yeah, like vehicle parts, 5%.
The vehicle industry, like that's crazy.
Pretty
14%.
much. Yeah, and industrial circuits, 4.3, machinery, 3.24. Yeah. If you want tech that's going to last, you talk to the Japanese folk.
Yeah, 100%. Wow.
Japan's rise as an economic superpower, the original tiger economy, is a truly remarkable story when one considers that it was barely out of the feudal era a century and a half ago. The manufacturing techniques that originated in Japan, such as just-in-time logistics, have been emulated today by most Western economies, as well as the later tiger economies of the Far East, such as Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and finally China. Japan was the first country to develop high-speed rail systems, with their world-famous Shinkansen or bullet trains first appearing in 1964 and continuing today to link all the major cities across all 4 main islands.
That bullet train, that is the one thing of many that hasn't migrated over to the United States yet that I hope does one day.
God, that would be crazy.
Yeah. They've been talking about doing it with Amtrak. I mean, I think Amtrak does have a high-speed train that goes, from New York to Boston, and they're talking about putting one from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. So,
I would love that. That would be awesome. Like an actual legit bullet train, you know? And that would be effing sweet, man.
Oh, 100%.
If they could pull that off.
Yeah.
And continuing today to link all the major cities across all 4 main islands. Japanese manufacturing brands are household names globally. In the automotive sector, these include Toyota, the world's largest by volume of production, Nissan, Honda, Suzuki, Mitsubishi, Mazda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Subaru, Isuzu, and Daihatsu.
Oh, wait, I thought Subaru was Australian.
No, they just perfected the use of, probably.
Oh, okay. They just use it a lot. So I do have I've pretty much owned Japanese cars my entire life. I've had a Toyota, I've had a Mazda, I've had a Nissan, and now I have a Subaru.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the reputation of like Honda, particularly the Honda Civics, of like even ones built in the 90s and the 2000s to this day,
bro,
are
they're
pretty
still
much
on the streets.
They're on the streets. They do not die.
Yeah.
And Yamaha, like, what was the thing? All right, so I need to go get a motorcycle and some musical instruments. Where do I go?
Yeah.
Where?
Exactly.
You're not gonna believe it.
Yeah.
Yamaha.
It's crazy to think about too. Talk about a diverse shop for sure.
Yeah. Get you a guitar, get you a motorcycle.
Until the recent ramp-up of Chinese production, Japan was making more cars, trucks, and motorcycles than any other country in the world, and is still the world's largest automotive exporter. In electronics, Japan dominated for decades, although recent competition from South Korea, Taiwan, and China has reduced their market share.
I remember when we did Geography Now in Japan, or I confused Samsung with being a Japanese company. They're a South Korean company. My bad, y'all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, its electronics industry is still the world's largest, and Japanese brands of televisions, cameras, video recorders, camcorders, video game systems, and laptops are legend. Past and present, they include Sony, Panasonic, Canon, Nintendo, Yamaha, Epson, Toshiba, Hitachi, Sega, Nikon, Sharp, Konica Minolta, Fujitsu, Casio, JVC, Pioneer, Sanyo, Ryko, and NEC.
Yeah, another list of
greats, like the top top everything.
Yeah, Panasonic, Sega, Nintendo, Toshiba, Canon, Nikon, Yamaha again, and JVC, and like the granddaddy of all, Sony
Yeah,
is
Sony.
they're all household names in the States.
Yep.
Yeah.
These corporations were leaders in the development and mass market production of the transistor radio, the personal cassette player, digital watches, video recorders, and laptops. Tokyo has the third largest stock exchange in the world, after the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq, while the Japanese currency, the yen, is the third most widely traded currency, after the US dollar and euro. The last decade of the 1990s and early 2000s saw economic activity contract, and this is part of the reason why Japan has by far the highest national debt of any developed nation at an eye-watering 236% of GDP in.
Oh my God, 236, and compare that. Which one is it? The United States. That's the red one right here. That's almost 100%. And what's the green one here? I think that's Italy with like almost like 150%.
Wow. Okay. Damn.
Yeah, that blue one, that's the United Kingdom. The dark blue one, that's Canada. And and then Germany. Germany's got its shit together. Best of all of these with 75%.
That's the closest plateau on this thing right here.
Yeah.
Wow.
2017. With the aforementioned demographic issues of a declining population, the economic future of the country remains unclear. Japanese culture is one of the most distinct and globally recognized in the world. It is a complex fusion of both East Asian and Western influences, but at its center is a rich body of customs and art that originated within the archipelago. The Japanese unique take on calligraphy, illustration, painting, flower arranging, garden design, poetry, theater, and clothing are admired globally and have led to many Japanese words finding their way into English, including bonsai, haiku, ikebana, kabuki, origami, geisha, kimono, and karaoke.
Yeah, I only recognize half of those. Definitely karaoke. That's for one. Bonsai and origami. Yes.
Yep.
And again, I mentioned tsunami.
Yeah, that's what we've adopted. That's awesome that we do have that word.
Yeah, tsunami.
Tsunami.
Japanese traditional warfare has been a magnet for aficionados around the world for many years, with the costumes, traditions, and weapons of the samurai, particularly from the Warring States period of the 16th century, being instantly recognizable. Its martial arts are world famous and include karate, sumo, aikido, and kendo, with judo in particular being internationally popular and taught in dojos or schools around the world. And on a related subject, ninjas, anyone? More recent global influences have come from Japan fusing its power in the electronics industry with its long tradition of art and storytelling in the video games industry, being a major player in this market since the 1970s.
Yeah, like three of those, all those, honestly. Pokemon, that was, third, fourth grade for me. Mario, always a staple. Sonic the Hedgehog, always a staple. Space Invaders.
These are all just staples. These are all right here. This is what entertainment was for me back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, name something else. You can't as a kid. At least growing up in the 90s. This was my childhood right here.
Yeah. And as of modern times, at least three of these, like Pokemon, Mario, and Sonic, have all gotten, real life action movies with them as well.
Yeah.
Or like animated. That's what I meant to say with Mario.
Actually, animated. True. No, but they did have the real action movie.
Yeah. They did back in the 80s or 90s. Yeah, they don't talk about that one. And
Japanese cartoons and comics, manga and anime are the latest incarnations in a tradition of illustration that goes back centuries, and now enjoy a huge audience globally in addition to the domestic market.
Manga and anime, I I couldn't tell you any of them other than, whatever came out in the early 2000s, Pokemon. I don't even know if you consider Pokemon an anime, but also Yu-Gi-Oh! And what was the other one?
Sailor Moon was anime.
Sailor Moon, yeah, but I never got into that one. I'm having a Dragon Ball Z. That's the one I was trying to come up with.
There it is.
Yeah, that's the one. And we've said multiple times on the channel, like, if right now in our Patreon we're focusing on British TV shows, but we're wrapping that up. So if enough of y'all go over to the Patreon and sign up for that, we could probably throw at least one up. Like, we don't want to.
We don't know which one. Where do you even go? So always open to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Japanese cinema is as old as any in Europe or North America and had a golden age in the 1960s, with Kurosawa's Seven Samurai regarded in many polls as one of the finest films and most influential in cinema history. And dare we mention it, Godzilla, a prehistoric sea monster awakened and empowered by nuclear radiation to become a global pop icon.
Yeah, Godzilla, that's huge, and not just, that character, but also the fact that the dubbing over of many Japanese films is just hilarious. It's
a staple. Everyone understands what you're doing when you do that, and I feel like that's global. And
if you do recognize this, you have to leave a like on the video.
And
subscribe.
Because you've been through it as well.
Thanks for indulging me on that one.
Oh, dude. Let you cook, as you say.
And I haven't even mentioned food. The Japanese have developed a distinctive and refined cuisine across the centuries, with ramen noodles, fried tempura, teriyaki meats, and sushi being the most popular around the world. Any country that can make raw fish not only edible but desirable deserves particular credit.
Yeah.
Facts.
I have become a sushi lover, particularly when I moved from North Carolina up to, the DMV area, where, one, it's an area that has access to water and, you could trust the seafood, but also kind of got rid of my preconceived notions of sushi just being raw fish. But, it's really good stuff.
It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I have this, one of my hot takes of food in general is, I feel like if a lot of people could get past their preconceived notions about sushi being just raw fish, it could be just as popular as pizza, because there's so many things you could put it. Like, particularly, like, you go to like Jimmy's Seafood in Baltimore, there's, several ways that they do sushi rolls. Like, and it's very diverse. Yet I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's just as flexible as, like, topping pizza.
Yep. There's some awesome combinations they can go.
Oh yeah.
I just don't want to get into it because I'm starving.
I know, but a good bowl of ramen, like, being cheap with an egg in it, that's a good struggle meal as well. And yeah.
Fish not only edible but desirable deserves particular credit.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
For a relatively small country, isolated on the eastern fringe of the continental landmass of Eurasia, Japan's global reach is astonishing. As a gaijin who has studied this country, its history, and its art for the longest time, I still have to scratch my head when trying to understand the fundamental essence of the country and its people. What is Japan? Who are the Japanese? There are few, if any, non-Western countries that have so successfully taken the expansion of Western culture and fused it into their own rich historical traditions and art. And yet how does one reconcile the softness and perfection of their manners with the savagery that has marked the darker episodes in their history? I, for one, cannot. Japan is as much of a mystery as it is a fascination, and will likely continue to be so in the centuries to come.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
And that's Japan. I hope you enjoyed this whirlwind tour of that unique archipelago and its people. If you did, then please like and share this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're from this country, and if I missed out anything that you feel is important. If you haven't done so...
Yeah, we're gonna definitely... Oh, come on. Definitely gonna lean on the comment section here to see what they missed. What our buddy Geodiode missed. But yeah, like earlier with the Bourdain quote, like he just pretty much summarized it kind of like that. It's basically Japan is Jimi Hendrix and the rest of the world is in the 60s, both Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's just like Japan is just Japan. Like, yeah. Not comparable. Yeah. They're the only ones that have kind of done this first. Kind of thing. And also, you know, I like that end. He like wrapped it up. They brought all their traditions and successfully fused them with the new tech, new world right now. Yeah. And it's like this very unique take on what it is. I don't know exactly. It's like what is it? Is Japan? Shit. Yeah, it's Japan. Yeah, Japan. And knowing how much of Japanese culture has permeated itself into the West, into America, is just a beautiful thing. I'd say. Yep, for sure, man. I mean, my God, someday that's definitely a country I have on my bucket list. Yeah, you and me both. And on that, I will implore the people watching here, please comment below, how do two Western dudes such as ourselves, how do we be a good tourist in Japan? How do we not, cause too much trouble, and how do we be respectful, Very important questions that we need answers to. Yeah, and maybe some other recommendations as well. Whatever you got, we're appreciative of each and every one of them. Yep. Man. Yep. Thank y'all for watching. Subscribe. Watch another video. Thanks, channel members, for your support. Yep. And what now, Dan? Unplug and do something legendary, guys. See y'all next time. Later.